I'm Allie with Potomac Beads, and in today's tutorial I'm going to go over the simple steps to flat chenille stitch. This can be done again with a variety of materials. We'll go over that a little bit, but if you want to gather up some supplies, let's get started. So with chenille stitch, it's really simple, but it feels a little bit difficult at the start. What you want to make sure is that you have some thread. I'm using 0.006 wildfire beading thread, and I have a size 12 needle. You can also do this with a 10, and again, you can do it with a variety of products. Aluminum silver 80 seed beads and Duracoat or galvanized gold seed beads in the Miyuki brand. I'm using 8s and 11s. The first thing you want to do is put your needle on your thread and then use a stop bead. You want about 10 to 12 inches at the end of the thread because we're going to build the whole bracelet and then put on our actual clasp. You want to think about it almost like a herringbone netting, basically. You have on 111, then 1/8, then 111 and 1/8. That's one pair. Then you have two pairs of the same thing. 3 and 4. Now you can make this as long or as short as you want, and however wide that first row of beads that you put on in those groupings of, again, the 8, 11, 8, that's one grouping, no space between the second grouping, and right in a row here. That's going to be the length or the width of your bracelet. To start the stitch then, we're going to add 111 that's going to decorate the side of the stitch, and 180 to start the second row. From here, you're going to skip over that last 80, and we're going to go towards that stop bead. I want you to go back through all of those beads, all the way to the end. So you're going back through that whole set of beads, which brings your needle out towards that stop bead. When you give a nice tight pull then, it's going to pull those 80s kind of right beside one another, right there with the 11 just hanging out on the end. From here, we want to do the same thing on this outer edge, adding an 11 and an 8. From here, then, we're going to go back through the 11 seed bead, going with our thread reversing the opposite direction away from that stop bead. In row number 2, we're going to concentrate on adding in some of our 80 seed beads. To add in some of our 80 seed beads, you're going to add them 2 at a time and sew through the next gold 11. Your threaded needle is sewing away from that stop bead, so I kind of pick it up and turn it in my hand. It makes it much easier. Sewing through that next gold 11 which is going to perfectly position these 2 80s right on top of the 2 80s below. Again, 2 more 8s go on through the next gold bead. When you're going through these beads, you also want to think about the fact that you want the thread, if possible, to kind of sit in a line. So when you're looking at the gold beads here that I'm sewing through, ideally the thread that I'm adding is going to be above the last thread that was there below. Adding in 2 more of the aluminum 8s, I'm going to go through the 11, and then I'm going to go down through the base row 8 there. Pulling the thread and needle then, I'm going through that base row 8 and coming out basically the bottom of row 1. That's going to be at the very opposite of that stop bead. We're going to go up through that 11 on the side, through the 11 right here on the end, and get ready for another row. So that's going to be rows 1 and 2 of the chenille stitch. Now, unlike herringbone, where the beads sit right in a row, the smaller bead that would be in between, these are going to sit opposite or every other, and that's how you're going to get one less kind of gold bead in the row. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go in between the 80s that I just added in the previous row, and I'm going to sew through that first 80 next in line. Bring that kind of tight together there. And now I'm going to add a row of gold beads. 1 gold bead, sew through 2 of my 8s. So I'm coming out between one of those groups of 2 8s that I just added. So again, 111, sew through 2 8s, 111, sew through 2/8 and off to the side. When you notice here, when you're done with this third row, you'll notice the first row has 1, 2, 3, 4 gold beads. The second row is only going to have 1, 2, 3. Our next row that's going to have the 11 O's will go back to 4. So you can see it sits opposite, that you're going to have the 11 O's. When you look at them, they're almost going to look like they're on a diagonal rather than stacked up and down like a traditional herringbone. So our next row, we're going to add another grouping of 8s. So we have 2 8s. We're coming out the side here. We want the 2 8s that are going to run right along the top. You're going to add your 2 8s, sew through the gold 11. Again, 2 8s get added through the gold 11. Next again, 2 more silvers through the gold. And then as you come over here along the side, we are going to add our 2 silvers. And after we add the 2 silvers here, we're going to kind of round it out. We're going to go through the 2 silvers below, right there. See, there's 2 silvers below. So you're going back towards that stop bead. That's going to pull these 2 silvers right above those 2. And then I want you to sew through. You can sew through the gold if you want. I'm just going to sew right up through that silver and out. You're then going to be coming out through that last grouping of your silver beads. What you're going to do there is add one of your 11 O's down through that second of the 8s. Grab an 11, grab an 8, and back through that gold that you just added. That's going to decorate the outside edge there with a little bit of that gold. And there you're in place then to do the next row. So it's a little tricky because you're spinning around, but again, you're adding the 2 8s, then going back through the 2 8s below, back up through the 8, adding an 11, down through the 8, and adding the corner fringe there with the 11, the 8, and back through that 15. We now get to go through the 8s and add in our 11s. So we know we don't want it to sit right above the last row of 11. So you know you're going to go through 2 8s and out. So that way it sits almost, if you look the previous row of golds, it's going to sit right above there. So I went through 2 11s to kind of pull in the side, add an 8 through add an 11 through 2 of my 8s. Add an 11 through 2 8s. And you want to make sure you're following step by step, because until you get the hang of kind of that spinning around, it is very, very easy to kind of lose track of what you're doing. Add an 11, go through the 8. And that finishes up this row here on the side. You're always going to have kind of every other, that little 1 8 0 kind of sticking up and hanging out there. Once you come out to the side, add your 11 and your 8 to get ready for your next row of your piece. You're basically on repeat now, where we're going to go through the gold. And now we're going to add 2 of our silvers. So through the next gold, 2 silvers, and it'll start going faster once you get the hang of it. Go through the gold, 2 silvers, through the gold, get those in there, and then circle down, going through the bottom, up through the side gold, and out through that middle silver. Once you're out through the middle silver there, it's time to add another row of our gold beads. And when you add, you know, right here coming out, you can start to kind of follow the pattern that you're like, oh yeah, I don't need a gold bead there because there's already one below it. So you know that you're going to sew through the next 8. So we can put a gold bead in another place. And go through 2 beads, kind of like a herringbone stitch. And that gets you in position for your next gold bead. 2 beads, add 1 more gold, and then connect through those 2 beads basically. You're going to do the 1, get there, and out, and connect that you have those 3 beads there right in the row. When you have your 3 beads in a row, you're going to go through that last 8, giving a nice tight pull, and that's going to pull those 2 together. Then again, we're onto a row of 8s. So we're going to do 2 8s, circle around. So you're going back through those 2 previous in a circle, which is perfectly going to position your next 2 8s. So through that 1 there, 2nd and down, and now you get your place ready for your next 2 8OC beads. So if you look, the 8s are going to be in a row, and then the 11s are going to be kind of sitting on that every other angle. 2 more 8s, through an 11. And you can see here, okay, I need 2 8s. How am I going to do this? You know that you need 2 8s right above there. And once you go through, you're going to think, oh no, if I put 2 8s here, so it's kind of problem solving. If I put 2 8s here, how am I going to get back to that top to make sure that I'm coming out? Here's where you're going to circle down through the 2 below it, go back up through the 1, and you're in a position now to add the next 11, or the next 11. Go out the side bead then. You're out the side, so it's time to add a gold and a silver and back through the 11 that you just added. So the corner turns are kind of tricky. You're either going through the beads or you're adding that bead along the side. Unlike herringbone, where the rows are going to have the seed beads on opposite ends, those 11O seed beads are going to be right across from each other, the ones that are flagging the ends of the design. Now I've got to add in my new 11Os. So I'm going to go through the 2 8s that sit below. Give a nice pull. That one's kind of set up and ready to go. I'm going to get my 11s in here. And remember, they're always going to sit kind of if you're looking on that angle or opposite. And that's where you know you need to put them, or how you know where you need to put them. Last one on and out. When you come to the end of the row, and you realize that you have a seed bead here on this side, it makes you realize, oh, I need one on the other side as well too, because remember, they're going to be mirror images. So you know that you need to put an 11 and an 8 onto your needle, which will kind of hang out there along the edges. When you're through there and along the edges, time to put on your next row of your 8O seed beads. So that one's going to hang out there, and you kind of have that mirror images. And now we need our 8Os on. 2 go in, 2 through, 2 through the 11, 2 through, and here I am on the side. I'm through that last 11, and I need to get back to the top here, so I know I'm going to go down through the 8. Oops, not through that 11, too far. Up through the 11 on the side, not the previous row. Up through, and when I'm through, I need to go through the first 2 because I already have an 11O seed bead there. 11 goes on through 2 seed beads. And again, this is just you're on repeat then. Once you kind of got it, you've got those turnarounds, you've got how to go, and you can really change this up and have fun adding in crystals, doing 6s and 11s, doing all the same size, and really kind of keep going with that beautiful chenille stitch, which gives that opposite look of the golds in different places. So while I'm doing this and kind of working on it, I thought I would answer the question, why chenille stitch? So why would you do this stitch, which requires kind of a little bit more thinking, keeping track of, okay, this row is my row of 11s, this row is my row of 8s, what I have to do, if I have to spin around, if I'm off to the side. The one thing is you get this beautiful, beautiful lattice pattern that you can see the 11 O's that are in between on that diagonal. versus a herringbone stitch, which would be very much not that lattice look and on a line. And the other reason to do it is because there is actually a lot of thread going through this. It's a very secure stitch that you can easily pull tight, get this nice kind of floral pattern of this lattice, and make sure that you know that your thread and your beads are not going anywhere. Because unlike a traditional herringbone or a peyote stitch, you have a lot of thread going through. You're going to need at some point to add thread to your project as you're done with it. And remember that as you're kind of adding the thread to that project and getting the look and the design, that you want to do it somewhere along the project. I'll continue a little bit further working on this beautiful chenille stitch and then come back and show you how to add thread for this project. So some things to keep in mind with the chenille stitch. These are kind of some helpful hints as I go longer to show you. One, when you have the 11-0 seed bead as well as the 8-0 seed bead on the right side, you're also going to mimic that on the left side. Naturally, then you have kind of those two pillar ends, and you know you need to fill in the middle because you just did 11-0s with some 8s. Once you fill in that area with the 8s, you know it's time to go back to 11-0s because you're doing every other stitch. When you go over here to the side, you think, oh, where to go? You know you need to go through the gold, but then you're kind of stuck. So when you're stuck here and you think, oh, I don't know where to go, you think, oh, I need to get back up to add the 11s. So I'm going to circle down through the 8, up through the 11 on the side, and through 2 11s, or 2 8s, because I know I don't need to put an 11 there. I need that space. That allows you to do a quick row where you're adding just 1 11 between 2 8s. And then after that period, you get to the end of the row and you think, oh my goodness, now I have nowhere else to go. I know I need to add 8s, so I add 2 8s. And how am I going to get them to stay? I'm going to circle around almost like a square stitch. And then I know, like, okay, I still need to add more of my 8s because I just did a row of 11, so I know I don't need to put an 11 there yet. I need to go down to the 11 and then add in the rest of my 8s because you're adding 2 at a time and connecting to those points. And I know I'm going fast, but this is kind of the helpful hints after you get going and learn the pattern. Here again, where am I connecting to? I got to the end, just like I did on this side, circling around. I'm going to circle around this side as well too. Circling around this side, I realize, okay, I need to get back to 11s. So I'm going to go up through that first 8 that I just put on in that group of 2, add an 11, go down through that 8, add an 11 and an 8, and back through. Now again, I know, okay, that's right, I'm on adding in my 11s. So the next place I need it is between those 2 8s. So I'm going to go down through and continue on to make my pillars. Once those pillars are there on the side, it's just that repeat of knowing, okay, I need 8s, and then I need 11s, and I need 8s, and then I need 11s. And how am I going to build on through and kind of spiral around doing those connections? Back through here, and then I'm ready with those pillars again to add in my 8-0s. So here I am out of thread, and I'm at a point here where I'm coming out right near the 11-0, and I've got 2 8s to add, so it's a good spot. You can see I still have a little bit of thread in my needle on, and what I'm going to do is tie a new piece of thread onto that older piece of thread. Tying a nice tight pull, and then pulling the older piece of thread and pulling the knot down next to that 11-0 seed bead. Grab the 2 thread ends then, the one that the needle's still connected with and the one you just tied on, and tie the 2 thread ends together. Give a nice tight pull. Take the old needle and thread now, and it's coming out the 11. So what you're going to do is kind of hide it and go backwards through an 8. There, down through the 11, and basically follow along a thread line to get rid of that thread so that you don't see any extra. Once you follow along that thread line so you don't see any extra, you can kind of reverse the thread a little bit. That holds it and tucks it. You don't need to do this because honestly just doing the knot is going to secure it, but that gives you an opportunity to get that thread end away from the actual piece that you're going to keep creating. Take your thread burner, burn down on that thread, and burn down on that thread end. Take your new thread, add on the needle, and continue on like normal. So it is now clasp time, and we get to add in our clasp to our design. And what we're going to be doing is adding the clasp in right where we have those two pillars. So I have those pillars, and I'm going to be adding the clasp in there. I have on one of my 8 seed beads, like I would regularly be doing. I'm going to add one of my 11 seed beads, go up through the first loop of my clasp, and this is going to be the exact same on the other side too. Up through the first loop of my clasp, back down through that 11. So back down through that same 11. And then I'm going to add on an 8. So there goes that one, add on the 8. And then I'm going through the next 11 in line. Give a nice tight pull, and that first loop will sit there. Coming out again, you're going to repeat. So 11 and 8 go on. 8 first, then an 11. Up through the clasp. You can use wire guards if you want to. And we're going to come back and reinforce this. Down through the 11. Add another 8 through the next 11 in line. So all we're doing is we're doing that chenille stitch as well, but instead of kind of just going right through and adding 2 8s, we're adding in the 11 and then catching on to the clasp. We will come back through, like I said, and reinforce the clasp one more time. This is the same thing at the beginning and the end as we add the clasp into the design. Here at the end then, I'm going to circle around, give a nice tight pull. Oh, missed my 11. And naturally we get to circle around to the bottom of the clasp. Off the side here, then right back up. Coming through here then, go ahead and reinforce the clasp, and your chenille stitch bracelet is done. Once you get the required length, and this clasp fits perfectly, you're going to do the same thing on the other end, building it till you get your pillars, and then attaching the clasp on the opposite end. Once you get the clasp on, you can really see how beautiful this bracelet is. Again, it is a gorgeous lattice stitch with this beautiful design of the 11s and 8s. Again, keep in mind with this stitch that you are more than welcome to use tons of different materials for the design, as well as tons of different clasps options, and make it your own. Remember, if you do need any materials or you don't have ones that you want to see in use, you can check out the links below you to shop with us online at PotomacBeads.com. As with all the videos and the instructional ones, it's good to go back and watch this video again. Comment below if you're having any trouble, because it's not the easiest stitch by far, but I think it is one of the most beautiful stitches. So once you master it, you'll be really, really happy with it. Also, you can share this to somebody that might need it, as well as press the little bell in the corner and subscribe to get regular updates from us here at Potomac Beads. Thanks so much for watching, and enjoy learning and rediscovering maybe the chenille stitch.